Good evening. Welcome to the CEU Executive MBA Online Open Day with online guests from around the world. My name is Thomas Lammel. I'm the Senior Program Manager of CEU Executive MBA, and I will guide you through this evening. We will start with the program presentation by Faculty Co-Director Professor Yusaf Akbar. I will briefly introduce Yusaf Akbar to you. Professor Akbar is CEU EMBA's Faculty Co-Director and Associate Professor of Strategy. He has published over 40 journal articles, 4 books, and numerous contributions to academic and professional research in strategy and international business. He's founding editor of the International Journal of Emerging Markets and an advisor to governmental authorities, and his consulting and professional references include Citibank, Deutsche Telekom, Siemens, Texas Instruments, and Toyota.
Thank you, Thomas. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to spend the next few minutes talking through with you the actual program itself and sort of give you some background about why we have the CEU Executive MBA, what's the philosophy behind it, but also to provide you with some very practical information about the nature of the program itself. So, you don't have to go very far these days to encounter a very important discussion that's taking place, in sociological, technological, and economic contexts, and that essentially is we are witnessing some of the most fundamental transformations of the world in a century. Just cast back your minds to the 2008 financial crisis, which was the biggest financial crisis in recorded financial history. Then in Europe, we had the largest ever refugee crisis since World War II in 2015. And here we are this evening doing what we're doing in this form precisely because we're now living through the biggest pandemic in a century. And these changes that we are witnessing, I think, are part of a much broader set of transformations that are taking place. Some of them, I think, are very positive, and some of them, I think, are very potentially dangerous. And I think one of the key questions we need to ask ourselves is, how do we as business professionals prepare for this increasingly challenging and unpredictable environment? And so I think the obvious question we start with is an MBA still the way to do it? We've seen an explosion in online education, massive open online courses, and the like. And so I'd like to spend a few minutes with you now just, presenting to you the logic behind our MBA and why we believe our MBA is definitely worth it. So, for many of you who are considering to do an executive MBA program, you're probably going to start by looking at an MBA in the city where you are based. And what you tend to find in these kinds of MBAs are, a pretty standard MBA curriculum. Most of the time, the faculty delivering the program are local. While you do have some international participants, often folks who are sort of based in your city, either working for local companies or international companies, there's generally a dominant group from the country in which you're based. Some of these MBAs, particularly in Western Europe, can be quite expensive investments, up to 80,000 euros. Including tuition and general expenses. Obviously, the good thing about them is that, of course, you don't have to leave your job. You can keep working whilst doing the program. And then, if you contrast that with sort of, the very top business schools in the world, the ones you see highly ranked in the Financial Times rankings, and what do they look like? Well, often they have very strong differentiated curriculum. So you can look at the top business schools in North America or in Western Europe or increasingly in Asia, and they're very distinctive programs, and you choose those programs because they offer a particular kind of expertise or perspective. Because often they're full-time programs, the student body is very international, actually. So you do get to interact with a lot of people from around the world. Of course, you often have to leave the labor market. You have to take a step out for at least a year in Europe and 2 years in North America, which of course can have fundamental impacts both on your ability to manage your finances during that time, but also sort of impacts on your career progression. They're super expensive, 120,000 euros plus and up. And of course, you may have to move your family to the place where you're taking the MBA. And I think what we do at CEU is we, I think, offer the best of both worlds, shall we say. First of all, there's no work interruption because we have a very practical and flexible modular program, and I'll come back to that in more detail. We're extremely mission driven, and again, I'll return to this, towards the end of the presentation about what we call the EMBA for the open world. We have a very international student body precisely because of the modularity in the program, so that folks can fly in for the modules and fly out, which gives us a major advantage. As we'll discuss, CEU has a two world-class campus locations, one in Vienna and one in Budapest. And another thing, as you're about to find out, is that CEU has some of the most influential and important faculty in multiple disciplines around the world. Here's an example. My colleague Mark Kaufman, who's a behavioral economist with a PhD from Harvard, has been doing really, really interesting work on how people's behavior fundamentally affects their economic productivity and activity. We have our star finance professor, Joy Chan, and any of the participants in our program will tell you that the great thing that Joy does is she makes finance both relevant, interesting, and digestible, which is not that easy to do. Led by Professor Miklos Koren, we have one of the best data analytics faculties in Europe. And the work that they're doing is really, really cutting edge and will help you make better decisions as executives. And we also have Adam Zawazowski, who's a great finance prof and really is able to help you understand complexity in financial markets along with other colleagues. We also have the Jean Monnet Chair in EU Energy Innovation Studies, and Mike Labelle is really, really cutting edge on renewables and green transportation and energy transitions, which I think is one of the major issues once we get beyond COVID-19. And aside from our in-house faculty, the program can also call on some of the best faculty from around the world. We have Christian Silos from Stanford University, who's an expert in innovation and social entrepreneurship. We have Miklos Savary from Columbia, who is one of the leading thinkers in digital marketing. Paula Caproni from Michigan is an award-winning leadership professor. Omar Hernandez from Berkeley is a fantastic professor in operations. And we have an absolute superstar in accounting, Hui Chen from University of Zurich. So here's what the program looks like. It's a 10-module program, and the first thing I'll draw your attention to is that the dates you see on the screen here are not going to change. So you can basically plan your studying around your professional and family activities based around these dates here. So that's the first thing. And as you can see, we have 3 modules in the first year, 4 in the second, and 3 in the third. And I want to draw your attention to the fact that the first module is slightly longer than the typical 4-day module because it's the opening to the program where we get through some really foundational aspects of MBA studies. And then also I'll draw your attention to the Budapest modules, which are our summer modules, where you will be taking our bespoke and cutting edge leadership program in each year with 3 separate modules, and you'll have an opportunity to benefit from electives from some of the best faculty in around the world that we invite to teach those classes. And of course, there'll come a day when you'll finish with us and you'll join CEU alumni from around the world. I mean, CEU is one of the most international universities on earth, and you can rely upon the existence of alumni from CEU on every continent. And the organization of the alumni is first class at CEU. We have city level chapters, country level chapters. There, pretty much in any country you'll go to, you'll find a CEU alumnus that you can meet up with and interact and network. It's one of the key assets that we have. Now, of course, the question is, how are we able to offer such a high quality program at just 25,000 euros? And the answer to that question lies in our founder and benefactor, George Soros, who created CEU with the mission to promote open society. And this year, the start of this year, it seems such a long time ago now, George Soros made a further contribution to CEU's mission by offering another $1 billion in endowment to create the Open Society University Network, which actually means that we are the best endowed university in Europe, and it's reflected in the way we do things. So what does the eMBA for the open world mean? I think first and foremost, when we mean open world, we mean that we are believers in skepticism towards traditional dogmas, hierarchies, and privileges. And both in terms of the way we teach, but also in terms of the composition of the cohort that you'll be joining with us, that diversity is absolutely key to creating a successful program. Secondly, we also believe in debate and radical, rational thinking. So every idea, we believe, can be challenged. We believe in facts and arguments rather than narratives. I mean, I suspect, if you spend any amount of your time looking at political debates today, much of what we do is we get trapped into narratives which create polarization in society. We believe that the best way to challenge that kind of narrative-based discourse is to actually make arguments based upon facts and realities, which is the hallmark of Karl Popper's definition of the open society. We are fundamentally opposed to all forms of discrimination, and we actively promote diversity within our program. And the way in which we finance the scholarships for our program means we can also create opportunity to people that would traditionally not be able to actually join the program. We see managers not just as people who deal with business and economic resources, but we also believe that managers go beyond that. They're actually positive change agents. So what does the CEU Executive MBA classroom look like? Well, currently we have 65 participants with an average of 14 years work experience, including a minimum of 3 years leadership experience. As you can see in the photograph we have here, we use state-of-the-art classroom technologies and setups in order to facilitate discussion, interaction, and so on. A highly immersive experience. We make use of interactive case-based learning rather than traditional lectures that you may find in some local MBA programs. And I think the key thought process is we want to take you, who are unquestioned experts in your particular field, from this level of sort of technical and functional expertise to the strategic level. So the tuition is 25,000 euros for the entire program. That includes all of the credits. In order to defray your other costs, we've negotiated special rates at partner hotels, both in Vienna and Budapest, which can suit all budgets, from 5-star hotels to more budget options. We've also negotiated discounts for flights with Austrian Airlines and Lufthansa Group, which will also help keep the cost down. So we invite you to join the open world. And if you apply by December 31st of this year, we're able to offer you a 6% early bird discount. Please note that the final deadline for this incoming cohort is March 21st, 2021.
Thank you very much. I think it's one thing for you to listen to the program presentation from our perspective, but it's another thing to hear from the perspective of participants who are actually in the program or have done the program already. So I would like to introduce you to a current participant, to Benny Fischer, who's a program manager at the Alfred Landecker Foundation in Berlin. And I would invite Benny to talk about the CEU experience, about the executive MBA experience, about his journey to executive MBA and what he has seen so far and how what he thinks of executive MBA. Benny, you've got the floor.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for the nice introduction, and obviously also for having me here. I'm very excited to be able to present my very personal journey with CEU and particularly with this program. I joined the last cohort of the Executive MBA. We started back in May, and then obviously the pandemic hit us. But nevertheless, I was able to have an on-campus experience, which for me put emphasis on the fact that probably I've done the right decision in joining this team, because the university was very quick in adapting to the current standards. Maybe a bit on my own, and also why I joined this program, but especially on how I feel with it. So I joined the CEU Executive MBA for one particular reason. I know what it means to lead an organization. I've been involved with both running but also consulting NGOs for 7 years now. But I've understood that in order to take my career to a next level, it is time for me to gain a bit more expertise. And this offer was very intrusive for me. I think it for very good reasons. I looked at CEU and then also considered joining there. The main reason for me was the combination of the ideology of the university itself, but then also what the program offers. And that brings me to answering your question in detail, Thomas. I think when it comes to summarizing what it is that I'm experiencing right now with the program, the thing that has to be put forward is that its participants, but also the staff that is working with us are unique, both in our group works, but also during on and off campus tasks. We've been able to connect, to bond, and I was actually able to also extend my professional network through this degree already. And then obviously the stuff that is, reachable 24/7, that is, we are being spammed with additional offers on a daily basis, be it interesting lectures that we'd like to listen to, or be it additional insights. I think the last example that I'd like to bring forward, then I give the baton back to you, Thomas, for maybe a next question. I was especially impressed with the degree to which the university allowed us to take part in shaping this degree. And I think a particular example that has to be mentioned here is that we were even allowed to taking part in choosing some of the lecturers for the next year. That we were allowed to sit in the room and grade some of the professors who applied for a position in this degree. So in this case, we're not only able to shape, the agenda and to be in constant contact with the staff, but we're even able to shape who it is that is teaching us in the end. And that is a very unique experience.
That's a good point. Thank you for sharing it. I want to emphasize on the diversity in class. Many local programs here in Germany or in Austria, they focus on very local faculty and local student body. But maybe you can share your insights on the international student body at CEU and the diversity in class, not just with regard to nationality, but also with regard to educational background or industry backgrounds or gender equality,
Sure.
whatever you assume,
So first of all, it's important to mention that I'm calling in from Berlin. I think I'm the only German in my cohort, and we span over. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it 70 countries, or so a vast amount of countries that is represented in our cohort? It's 60, I think. But basically, it's a vast amount. So the diversity with regard to languages and cultures, I think I do not need to say more in that regard. But when speaking of diversity, the one thing that I would like to highlight, Thomas, which you also suggested, the diversity of viewpoints. Just in the end of November, we handed in our first group assignment. And for me, it was a very uplifting and empowering experience to, in this very case, do a case study on the very nonprofit that I'm working for, together with a group of 4 people who are not only based in different countries all over the world, it's actually all over the world, but also who come from completely different backgrounds. I myself have been working in nonprofits for all of my career, and despite the fact that I was trying to focus on different areas, now I'm working on the intersection of tech and politics, I did understand that I'm somewhat biased when it comes to solving problems. So we constantly challenge each other, And I think this is unique in many ways. Then obviously, when it comes to other forms of diversity that are uplifting, I mean, this university, for good reason, stands in the spirit of an open society, and this is being reflected in every aspect of our experience. So, gender diversity. There is a diversity of backgrounds with regard to religion. There is a diversity of backgrounds of expertise, of professional areas. I think our cohort consists of, I mean, and again, this is a very subjective impression here, but I think we're a good 50-50 when it comes to people who have a business background and then people coming from different areas. And there it's really, you know, from culture to many people who do work in politics or in nonprofits. We have journalists, we have, and this is a very good mix for me personally, because to be fair, I was a bit hesitant to take this way, because I was a bit afraid of taking the business path, so to say. And this way, I'm able to learn business on a very high level, but it's tailored to both people who have this background and people who don't. And I'm able to learn from my peers who have this expertise, but at the same time, it's also being considered that I come from a non-business perspective.
You have mentioned the diverse backgrounds. Just to show our audience, we have people in the current cohort coming from the corporate world. We have people from NGOs, the public sectors, entrepreneurs, human rights activists, engineers, big data analysts. So it's not just an executive MBA for just one single industry or for just one profession. I think what really stands out here is that we welcome everybody at a professional level, but nonetheless, whatever their industry background is. Please, Benny, you wanted to say something.
So I have not mentioned my background. Maybe this is a good point to just give insights on that. I work for the Alfred Landecker Foundation, which is a German nonprofit. My background is actually mostly in human rights. I used to work especially for Jewish NGOs all around the continent. And now I'm working outside of the community, but trying to tackle hate, and mostly online. So I still have this human rights background, but as someone who works in a foundation, I need to understand how venture capital, in a sense, works. You know, there are many things that I need to learn from the business side that I did not know before. And for me, for example, it was an extremely uplifting experience to sit together in a room with people who, for example, work for LGBTQI nonprofits. And I've been working with these very organizations 4 to 5 years ago, back then when I was in Brussels. You know, it's just that I was never able to put a face to this organization. All of a sudden, I mean, there are 3 very NGOs that I, for the first time, got to know in person, whom I've been working with for a very long time already. So also in that regard, of course, diversity is an uplifting experience and it's bringing the program forward, of course.
Well, I'm glad you emphasized on the bigger picture that you're getting coming from your background. You're learning new stuff that you can take into your job, even though it's not part of your current job, but it helps you understand your environment. It helps you to understand and talk to stakeholders, to your bosses, to your board, to suppliers, you know, whatever your stakeholders are, and to understand the bigger picture here. And I think that's what makes executive MBA outstanding, that whatever your background is, it helps you gain the knowledge that you don't have so far, but to understand the bigger picture and to talk to your stakeholders who might have a different background, but it will take you on the same page.
Absolutely. And let me stay with this very example that I brought forward. The fact that we are able to do an assignment using the very nonprofit that I'm working for as an example also allowed me to bring in, you know, very critical minds looking at our operations. And at the same time, it allowed me to actually help the operations. We were developing basically we are trying to assess what impact the pandemic could have on the operations of our nonprofit and how we should adjust our strategy. So formulating such a strategy and then actually delivering it to our executives, who found it extremely helpful. And I mean, to be even more precise, our CAO said that she will actually use this very document that we produced in our, not only to make executive decisions, but also, you know, in board meetings and so on, that's uplifting. And obviously it pushed me both in a professional way, but to be fair, in a very personal way, because I was allowed to put myself in these shoes and to take these perspectives. Yeah.
Well, it sounds very empowering that you're not just getting, theory, but you're putting that theory in practice. It has, it seems like.
Oh, absolutely. To be fair, I would have not pursued a degree if it had been merely theoretical. For the simple reason that I do not find the time to, jump into a completely different world. So the mixture of being able to apply what we are learning, have obviously a very deep and fundamental understanding of theory in a best case scenario, but at the same time, growing as a person through the interaction with my peers. This is the mixture that I was looking for, and thus far, this has been the best part of the experience. The fact that I got all three aspects and did not have to decide to only go one way.
Right.
I mean, let's face it. I could have just enlisted in university and do business. To be fair, I think I would have not grown as a person. And my main aim in pursuing this degree obviously is to grow as a leader and not only to get a degree or to get a paper.
The last question for you, Benny, then we will move on to our alumni speaker of tonight. You've mentioned time. I would like to get your opinion on the modular format, which allows you to, I hope so, that allows you to juggle work life and study life and private life. Within the modular format, can you tell us something about the modular format?
So I think the most important part to mention in this regard is that from the beginning on, staff and faculty were completely honest with us. You really do get what you sign up for. You work throughout these modules, and you do work. Let's face it, it's intense. Yeah, these 10 days modules, you sit there, you study. But for me, it was also relaxing because I was able to find it, to leave my everyday life and to indulge in a completely different experience. It's a lot, but it's fun. And then throughout the year, there are certain periods in which you have to either prepare for a module or after a module, you're preparing for exams. And I'd say that each and every week, you have to allocate between 10, sometimes 15, maximum 20 hours if it's close to the exams. But I'll be very honest with you. I'm a person that I'm not the best manager when it comes to managing my own time. If I can do it, you can do it too. Okay. And by that, I definitely mean you get what you sign up for. You can completely trust in the time that you have to allocate. You will never have to allocate more. And for me, the most convenient part is I know from the beginning of the year when I have to study and when I can work. And when I work, and I do not need to have my studies in my mind. I'm not preoccupied at all. And at the same time, when there's studying period, I know that I can switch off work and go there. But even then, there's time left. And the very last thing that I'd like to say, even here, again, my peers are in the exact same situation. So when it comes to group assignments, we all sit in the same boat. We know how it is. We all need to shift our daily operations. Some of us have kids, some of us work. So, I mean, all of us work, of course. But in that regard, you're also being strengthened by the fact that everyone is pragmatic about their studies and their work, and everyone really needs to be that as well. It brings you forward and it really pushes you.
Well, Benny, thank you. Nothing to add from my side here. You've summarized it perfectly. Thank you very much, Benny, for joining us tonight. We were just speaking of diversity and different backgrounds, and I want to bring Mary Alcantara-Collins to the floor now, who has a background from the fintech world. She's head of startups at MKB Fintech Lab. She's an alumna of MBA class of 2012. And I would like to ask her basically the same question. How did Executive MBA help your career? Can you tell us something about the journey that you've taken with Executive MBA? And just please introduce yourself, and the floor is yours, Mary.
Great. Thanks so much, Thomas. It's great to be here. I can really echo a lot of what Yusaf was talking about in the introductory presentation. So in terms of why I chose CEU, I think all of those reasons were relevant then, and it's the same now. So I was really looking for a program that was going to deliver an international experience, that wasn't going to take me out of the job market for too long. So that was why I automatically ruled out any North American MBA program, because I didn't want to be in school for another 2 years. I wanted to be in the real world and have a program that was going to support me in a practical way from the very beginning. And then also, being able to do that at an affordable price point. I mean, you really cannot beat the value, the cost, benefit analysis of participating in a program from CEU. It's really unprecedented. So those were some of the reasons why I decided to join CEU. And it was really a great experience. I think it delivered on all of those levels. Yeah, it's interesting to hear Benny tell his story, because it sounds, it sounds familiar, even though it's, it was 8 years ago now that I did the program, and I know a lot has changed since then. Yeah, what I can speak to personally, I think for me, the biggest value of my CEU MBA experience was really the network. And I mean this in two ways. So first of all, in terms of a learning opportunity, I mean, you learn best when you have real people next to you. And, it was true in my class as well. We had only about 35 students, but there was 12 countries represented, people from all different industries, age groups, demographic. So it was really just, a crash course in international culture and communication every time you walked into the classroom. And that you really cannot replace easily. I mean, I think a good education you can get from many places, but that, real diverse experience is really special about CEU. And then the other part of the network is in actual real business opportunities. So I ended up starting a business with one of my classmates from CEU, and some of our first clients and partners were people that we met either directly through CEU or friends of friends. So it was really a big source for us in, kind of launching our professional careers after the program. Yeah, so I talked a bit about diversity. Yeah, I think I can also really echo the practical application of knowledge. So there was 2 courses in particular that, we still think about and talk about all the time. One is the action learning course, where it was basically like, a consulting project. So it was a way to really work with a company, provide them value, apply principles and things that we learned from other classes, kind of bring it all together in a real practical application. That was super useful for us. And then the other one was the entrepreneurship course. I think CEU has always done a great job coming up with new curriculum that's really reflecting the times. So we read the Lean Startup in that course. I think it was only published like that year or a few years before. And that was really kind of, for me, the impetus in joining this kind of crazy startup world. I'm a very risk-averse person, but that book and that course gave me kind of a structure and an approach for how to deal with uncertainty. And it made me realize that this is actually an area where I'm really passionate. Yeah, so since CEU, we launched a consulting business together that grew out of one of our ideas from the classroom. We pivoted kind of since then. And I got really involved in the early stage startup ecosystem here in Budapest. So I've been a mentor to basically all of the incubator and accelerator programs here. I've also worked for a few different programs in the US and across Europe. I led the program at MKB FinTech Lab for the past 2 years. Now I'm focusing on portfolio management there. And I'm also advising the Hungarian government on how to help startups expand internationally. And the education and network that I gained from CEU was really instrumental in my success in building my career so far. Yeah, I think I'm just looking through the notes. Anything else that I wanted to say?
Learning back then?
Sorry?
Have you been involved in action learning back then?
Yes, I was in the action learning course. I think it was maybe one of the first years that it was launched. We also did a boardroom simulation. I'm not sure if that's still part of it, but I'm sitting on a board now in Canada, and I think back to that course all the time. It was a great way to kind of practice the politics and kind of the soft side of board meetings. So yeah, very, very good, hands-on, real-world practical experiences delivered through the class. Yeah, I think, it's really an amazing place. Oh, I know what else I wanted to say. So not just even in the business school, but the whole CEU community. CEU has always been, as a university, has been responsible for bringing in some of the most amazing guest speakers and professionals to Budapest, and now I'm sure Vienna. And I think that was also a really nice complement. So it's, not just the business school and the business education, but it's, the connection to the broader university is also something that I would encourage everybody to take advantage of, because that's, it brings out all of these different elements and you make all these connections. And that was really valuable for us too. So yeah, I guess, in conclusion, I would say, it's a great place. You can meet a lot of great people, lifelong friends. You learn real world practical skills that you'll find yourself coming back to for years to come in unexpected ways. And I have to say, I'm a little bit jealous of anybody who's embarking on this journey now. I think the program has only gotten stronger. With the addition of the Vienna campus, it opens up a completely new city, a new network for everybody. There sounds like there's some amazing new faculty on board, new courses and topics rolled out all the time. And I mean, what an exciting time to be studying business and leadership and management in the midst of this unprecedented global crisis around us. So I'm jealous if you get to be a student now. That seems like this is really the best time to be doing your MBA at CEU.
You're invited to reapply again.
Yeah, well, I am going to come. I get to come to, there's a discount for alumni too to come to the elective. So it's on my list for the next summer module. So hope to see some of you in class, possibly.
We talked about the action learning. Our faculty co-directors will talk about it in the Q&A. They will elaborate on it because we kind of reshaped it, and it's called the Capstone project now these days. I would like to take the opportunity and thank you very much. We need to move on to our next point on the agenda. Mary, thank you so much for giving insight on your alumni experience and the alumni network. Thank you very much.
Great, it was a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
I will now pass the baton to Professor Christophe Heintz, who will deliver the research presentation on reasoning one's way to irrational choice. Just to briefly introduce Christophe to you, Christophe is member of the Leadership Development Faculty Group at CEU Executive MBA. He's leading the research group on adaptive cognition and economics. He studied mathematics and philosophy at the universities of Paris, at Sorbonne and Diderot and Cambridge. And he worked for his PhD at the Institut Jean-Nicot, l'École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales. Christophe, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for this introduction. It's a very nice introduction. So as you can see, the title of my short talk is, are we reasoning our way to irrational choices? I believe I tried to make this title a bit thought-provoking, and I guess that it sounds paradoxical. In common parlance, reasoning is the way to make rational choice, to be rational. But I want to have a different use of the terms here. Well, first of all, rational choice, I will use the standard characterization by economics. And I would say a rational choice is a choice that maximizes expected benefits or minimize expected costs. Okay, so you have on the one hand a characterization of rationality, and on the other hand, I want to characterize reasoning as thinking about the reasons for making a choice or holding a belief. Okay, so now you see that the question can make sense. Even though, still with this type of characterization, many scientists would claim that reasoning, as I characterized it, is the best way to make rational choice. So for instance, the seminal book by Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, asserts that we make choices on the basis of fast heuristics, which are efficient, but might lead to cognitive biases, so might lead to making mistakes. So we can make choice on the basis of these pretty efficient heuristics, but with the risk of making mistakes sometimes. Or we can spend the time and the effort to reason. So it's more slow, it's costly, but it is a better process for making rational choices because it warrants truth. It warrants being able to think about the good reasons. The further point that Kahneman and many others make is that heuristics processes would be ancillary, that is, they would be shared with other animals, while reasoning would be human specific. So that's the starting point of this talk. The puzzle comes from the fact that there are reasons, and good reasons, in fact, to think that reasoning sometimes lead to making systematic mistakes. So I will look at two examples where we can explain the systematic mistakes, or we have a plausible hypothesis for explaining the mistakes by appealing to how people reason. The first example is the decoy effect. So the decoy effect is as follows. You can have two options. Here in that case, two laptops that you envisage to buy. And you look at two dimensions, essentially. The efficiency of the processor and the price. And you see here that the efficiency of the processor here is low, but the price is better. And here the efficiency of the processor is quite good, but the price is much higher. Let's imagine that the price is sufficiently important for you that you believe this option is better. What happens is that when there is a third option that we can call a decoy that comes in, this will change the preferences. So here, you have here a very high price, the same type of processor here and here, and this price is lower. This option will be decoyed by this option. Decoyed means that looking at this option seems more favorable because you can compare it with what we will call the decoy here. You can compare this option with the decoy and see that it is much better than the decoy. So ignoring here the storage capacity. This contrast that you can come to think of is will lead people to buy this option. So while initially you would have without this option, without the decoy option, you would have preferred this laptop. When there is a decoy option, you would prefer this laptop. Why would that be the case? One standard explanation is that the presence of the decoy provides a reason for preferring the decoyed option. So the presence of this option provides a reason for favoring this option. So if I see someone and he asks me, why did you buy this expensive computer? I am in the position to answer, oh, I bought this expensive computer because it was a good bargain. Look, there is this other option, and anyway, I don't care about the storage, and it's much more expensive, so that was a good option for me. By contrast, for this one, it's much harder to justify. I have been reasoning, I have been looking for reasons for my choices, and when looking for reasons for my choice, an easily available one was provided by the presence of the decoy. So here we have a decoy effect. It's an irrational, it shows irrationality because in fact, this decoy option should be irrelevant. You should prefer this option whether there is a decoy or not. The presence of the decoy only provides you with a salient reason for making this choice. So it is irrational, but it seems that this irrational choice is best explained by the tendency of people to look for reasons, to look for justification. Another example where there are good hypotheses explaining an irrational choice is provided by the sunk cost fallacy. The sunk cost fallacy is nicely illustrated here by a business story, which is, it's often the sunk cost fallacy is also called the Concorde fallacy, where government, UK and French government, invested first in the Concorde, realized that it would not lead to positive outcome later on, but then continued to invest in this same option. So the sunk cost fallacy is an irrational choice because you decide to invest in a project not in view of the future benefits. This is what you should do if you were rational, but only in view of the past investments. People would have a tendency to commit to a course of action in spite of new information that would tell that it might not be so good. Why do people commit the sunk cost fallacy? There are several hypotheses, and one of them is that they commit the sunk cost fallacy because they feel they were justified to make the initial choice. If they had good reasons to make the initial choice, they should continue on that choice. They should stick with that choice. And the problem of reasoning here is that it comes with some difficulty to update this your belief in view of new information. You had good reasons initially, you should stick with those reasons rather than updating your belief. One way we can account for these two cases of irrational choices is by appealing to people's need to feel justified. And when they need to feel justified, they look for reasons. They are reasoning for being justified. And combined with a view of reasoning where its ultimate function, the ultimate function of reasoning is to provide some argument, some justification, then this leads to the conclusion that we can be lured by easily available reasons. Okay, so in the sunk cost fallacy example, these are the reasons that I initially had for making my prior investment. And in the decoy effect, this is the easily available reasons that is provided by the decoy. The presence of the decoy shows that one option is good. It is better than others. We want to test this hypothesis. It's not so easy to say, well, in fact, reasoning leads to irrational choice. There need to be some tests for that. How can we test this psychological hypothesis? The idea is that this need for justification is indeed most probably human specific. And I would agree also that reasoning is human specific. So if reasoning leads to making these systematic mistakes, these systematic irrational choices, then we should not observe the same mistakes among non-humans. And one way to investigate the question is to test whether non-human primates in particular, because they seem to be so similar to us, but not have reasoning capacity or the need to feel justified. Let's try and see whether these animals commit the same mistakes. So we will have here two possible explanations for the type of sunk cost fallacy and decoy effect. Either it is a human specific need to feel justified that I specified so far, But if this does not happen, if we do not observe these two mistakes among non-human primates, then we can think that there's the causes of those mistakes are more primal mechanisms that are shared with other primates. The candidates would be then heuristics. So for the sunk cost fallacy, an example of a heuristic is once you have invested, continue your action until completion. And it can be, we realize that it can be a good heuristics because in most of the situation, this will lead to good outcome, to making the best decision, but sometimes it doesn't. And another explanation that it can be put forward is loss aversion, the fact that when you think that something is already yours, you value it much more. Okay, let's look at the decoy effect. So here you have the protocol. The protocol is as follows. You have here a chimpanzee behind a window, and the chimpanzee, he knows that he can make a choice, and he can make only one of the choice, either a small grape or a small banana or a full grape or a full piece of banana or a carrot. And what are the results? We didn't find any significant difference in the proportion of times apes choose B across choose the big banana across those conditions that I specified. So whether there is a decoy or whether there is no decoy, they don't like carrots. Huh? So in this condition, it's providing a third option, but carrots compared to grapes, not interesting. So what is the conclusion is that there is no evidence for any decoy effect among great apes. And I mentioned one attempt. In fact, when you review the literature, several attempts have been made with little success. So there is reasons to think that the source of the bias are human-specific cognitive mechanisms. The most plausible suspect is reasoning. So that's our first conclusion. What about the sunk cost fallacy? Here again, we need to test both chimpanzees and humans. How do we do that? How can we check whether chimpanzees are make their choice in view of their prior investment? We put all subjects, whether they are humans or whether they are chimpanzees, in front of two identical towers. And what they have to do is to crank. They crank a tower, and when they crank the tower, the reward that is here come up, and it arrives to this window, and here they can retrieve the reward. The investment, while in the Concord, the investment is in time, effort, and especially money, here the investment is mainly in terms of effort. We made this tower so that it is rather annoying and painful to crank the device. So the cost investment is cranking. The payoff, we needed to have different type of payoffs. So payoffs is grape for chimpanzees and for humans, money. So here, these are the real device, and you see that you have to choose either this tower or that tower. It's a setting where children were being tested. And here is the setting where chimpanzees were being tested. And you see this chimpanzee cranking the device and looking at the grape coming up in anticipation of the reward. What are the results? Well, for humans, first of all, we compare preference reversal because of prior investment and preference reversal despite of prior investment. So we try to analyze to what extent prior investment will boost the number of time people go for the choice where they made a prior investment. And they do. The result is that there is a significant difference between these conditions where there is a prior investment and when there is, and the similar condition where there is no prior investment. Another way to run the analysis is to look at the rate of choosing probabilistic rewards between the baseline and the prior investment rounds. That is, to put it briefly, to do an analysis not within subject, but across subject. And here again, we obtain a significant difference. So we run several, to put it briefly, we run several types of analysis, and each time we do observe evidence that people commit the sunk cost fallacy. What about non-human apes? Similarly, we compared investment conditions and non-investment conditions. Not all, we didn't manage to run all the same statistical analysis, but we do obtain again significant difference. That is evidence that chimpanzees are influenced by the fact that they have made a prior investment. The third analysis that we ran is to look whether there was a significant difference between humans and non-human apes in this tendency to be influenced by their prior investment. And here we see no significant difference between non-human apes and human propension to continue investing in the option for which a prior investment was made. The conclusion is that human-specific processes based on justification do not seem to be the mechanisms that lead to committing the sunk cost fallacy. Since non-human primates commit the fallacy, we can conclude that evolutionary ancient cognitive mechanisms are likely to grant this fallacy. So let us go back to our initial hypotheses. The sunk cost fallacy might be done either because of primal mechanisms or because of human-specific mechanisms need to feel justified, and the decoy, we have the same hypothesis. Here are a way to sum up the results. For the decoy effect, because we don't observe it in non-human apes, we have evidence that the processes are grounded in looking for reasons, in reasoning. By contrast, for the sunk cost fallacy, since it is observed in chimpanzees, we have elements that tell us that maybe reasoning is not the guilty mechanisms for committing the sunk cost fallacy. So these are the results about reasoning. I want to conclude very briefly on reasoning in general. So managers, they will have this question, okay, so reasoning sometimes is good, reasoning sometimes is not so good. What should I do? How much should I invest in reasoning? And the answer is reasoning is good. Of course, reasoning is good. But reasoning is good only in some specific contexts. And here I will just mention one experiment that I have also run that shows that you give to people some cognitive puzzles. You know, those puzzles that you can often find and people, they are really thinking about it, and most of the time they give wrong answers. So one of the puzzles that I had chosen is such that people, they tend to make mistakes 85% of the time. do not give the right answer. And they are very bad. So they are very bad at solving the puzzle. But when they are in group, when they talk with each other, they are able to identify the reasoning mistakes that are made by others. So we are not so good at finding good reasons. We can be misled by our reasons. But when we put reasons, when we discuss reasons with others, we are able to evaluate those reasons. We are very good evaluators at reasons. We can identify good reasons and bad reasons. The last result that I want to point out is that I have asked business people whether they think that meetings and discussing this type of puzzle would lead to sufficient improvement into performance. And they all significantly underestimated the benefits of arguing and discussing together in order to solve the specific puzzle. So in general, having meetings is pretty costly and tiring. We tend to think that we spend too much time in meetings, but in fact, discussing things, evaluating each other's reasons can be very fruitful. And I want to conclude on this positive note.
Thank you, Christophe. Thank you for the research presentation. When I introduced you, I forgot to mention that the cognitive studies department that you lead is one of the largest recipients of European Research Council grants. So you know about the context here, and that our future potential EMBA participants will benefit from your research results within the CEU Leadership Program. Thank you very much, Christophe. We will now proceed to the next point of the event, which is the general Q&A. You're still very much invited to shoot in your questions. Let's start with the question from one of our participants. He's asking on the curriculum, what role do quantitative methods play in the program? What depth the participants need to know the advanced mathematical methods? I think, Yusaf, you can start with that question if you're fine with it.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas, and Joel, thanks very much for the question. So I think the first thing I'd like to emphasize is, because one of the key aspects of our program is facts, not narratives, we place a strong emphasis on the importance of quantitative methods in decision making, and that's reflected in the curriculum. We front load a lot of the quantitative classes, accounting, finance, data, and so on. So we give you the basis upon which, as you work through the program and you start looking at functional areas like marketing, operations, management, and so forth, you can actually use some of the techniques we develop in these quantitative classes to make better decisions. That's the first thing I'd say. And I think to respond to the second part of your question about what depth do you need, one of the things we do, which is not very common at all in the MBA world, is what we do is we, once you get accepted into the program, what we do is we create 2 tracks in our quantitative subjects, a standard track and an advanced track. And I think the great strength of this idea is that for some of you who are particularly strong in quantitative areas through your work or through your education, you can kind of be pushed a little bit further by our top-notch faculty. You can do more sophisticated stuff with you, while the folks who are coming into the program, perhaps without such a strong quantitative background, are going to get an absolutely high quality program, which is going to give you the really core ideas, core concepts, and core tools and techniques that you're going to need to not only understand others' quantitative decision making, but also contribute to the conversation meaningfully around quantitative decision making.
Thank you very much. Maciej, the next question is for you about the COVID measures in place and the COVID situation in general.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Christophe, for this amazing research presentation that really shows, how we connect practical questions of decision making, and we root them in really world-class, cutting-edge research that is being conducted at CEU. On COVID, we've been talking, my colleague Yusaf Akbar very eloquently was describing this kind of level of attention to quality that we have. I think how we have handled the COVID situation is a case in point. A lot of our competitors who frankly, expect multiple times more in terms of tuition investment on your side, chose an easy path and basically switch all the classes to online. We have not done it. While maintaining and actually significantly exceeding all the safety measures by the respective governments, Austrian government for the Vienna campus and Hungarian government in Hungary, we went out of our way to continue the in-person experience for the vast majority of our students. The way it worked has been, if you can't travel, if you are in one of the countries that are, covered with travel restrictions, you can join online. But if you can travel, you are coming to our campus, where you are given a rapid test at the entrance of the module. We were actually one of the first universities in Vienna that introduced mass rapid testing. I mean, the pace of events is amazing, but those have been put to market only like a few weeks ago, if you can believe in it, and we've been one of the first who use them. Then we put you in much larger rooms than the class size normally would require, between 2 and 3 times the size, so that everybody has a measure of social distancing that is safe. We have world-class classrooms, which have both the advanced audio and video for those participants who need to stay online and cannot come, but also very modern systems, ventilation systems that have been proven effective in terms of making it not, of course, risk-free, but much more safe. And that shows you that we care. We care about this, what Yusaf mentioned, the experiential aspect of this, which you can't attain with an online program. And no matter, how many nice sentences and rhetorical flourishes a recruiter for any of our competitors would offer to you, don't believe that you can do the transformational learning campus experience sitting in front of a computer. And that is why we are absolutely committed to continue for as long as it takes, at the CEU's expense, at no additional cost for the participants, to provide those, frankly, very costly for us safety measures to allow as many of you as possible to join us in person.
Thank you. You took away the question on online format already. Yusaf, can you talk about the application process and elaborate on that, please?
Yeah. Thank you, Thomas. So obviously, if you want to be considered to join the CEU Executive MBA, you have to complete the online application procedure. There are a number of important documents that you'll have to submit. The information is given to you during the application procedure, but feel free to reach out to Thomas if you've got any questions about the documentary requirements. Now, once you have your application packet together and submitted, what happens next is we assess your application, and we have some baseline requirements, which is a minimum of 8 years professional experience to start with. And then if you meet the baseline criteria, we invite you for a 45-minute interview with a faculty member who will sort of have a conversation with you about why you want to join the program, what you can bring to the program, what you expect to get from the program, and so on. And after the interview, a recommendation is made to the CEU Executive MBA Admissions Committee, who then look at your application in the round and make a recommendation which goes to the rector and president of CEU, who's currently Michael Ignatieff, who makes the final decision. Obviously, depending on the time of year, times of the year are busier than others, but we try and get a response to you as quickly as we can. Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you very much. Maciej, can you please talk about the exam period, or how exams are going to be done within the modules or after the modules?
Good question. Benny mentioned it already from kind of participants' perspective. I would like to say what Benny doesn't know, since he is in the early stages of the program. He's part of the class that joined us in May. That actually, for most of the program, you don't have exams. You have projects. You have applied projects that puts pieces of knowledge, such as the ones that Christophe presented, into actual applications in your organizations, in your businesses. And as you rightly mentioned, Thomas, the perfect sign of it is, instead of a thesis when you write, a long paper that nobody would read, we actually ask you to take part in what is called the capstone project, which asks you to deliver a portfolio of applications. So in each course, you would have, a specific task, individual or group. By the end of the program, we want you to have a collection of those applications that you have, accomplished in your business, in your maybe voluntary or other experience. It can be coaching of somebody who is whom you want to help. It may be bringing a change project in your company. That is kind of a philosophy here. Theory is the opposite of practice only if it's a bad theory. A good theory actually informs practice, and that is why this program really, it's very rigorous. I hope you can already feel it, that it's rigorous, but it is not detached from reality. It gives you all those tools to actually impact your managerial career and to fundamentally lift you from this operational level to a truly strategic level.
You kind of took away the next question for Yusaf. I wanted to ask him about the capstone project / if there is a thesis. Would you like to add something, Yusaf, or would you like me to go to the next question?
No, I think Maciej did a great job of explaining it. Why don't we go to the next question?
Sure. How does the average participant look like with regard to qualification and expertise in the executive MBA class?
You would like me to take that one, or?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure. So, this is a mid-career program. So it's not a junior MBA. So we need people that come in with, a minimum of 8 years professional experience. The current class has about 14 to 15 years. I would characterize them as executives who are typically running units, be they functional or area, country-based units. And, my sense, and, I'd certainly be interested in my colleague Maciej's view on this. I think many of our participants are looking to take their career to the next stage, where they take on strategic level responsibilities, and and it's the kind of theorizing and applied stuff that Christophe showed us this evening, which I think are really important elements of informing strategic thinking in a much more kind of conceptual level. So we're not really in the business of how to. We're in the business of using good sound theory to help executives conceptualize, frame, and execute more sophisticated and effective decisions. That's my view, and that's what I see in our participants. I can give you, a couple of data points to show you progression, if you like. we had one participant a few years ago who came in as a very successful sales executive working for Deutsche Telekom. Completed the program, got hired by Philips, and became a global sales transformation director after graduation. It kind of sort of shows you sort of the way in which our participants develop. And then I'll give you another example of two more graduates of the program. One was a very successful regional Cisco manager. Another one was an engineer working for Lufthansa Systems. And they both quit their corporate jobs to create a startup, which is called Talkabot, which ended up receiving more than $500,000 worth of startup funding from Singapore. So I mean, so I think that kind of gives you a flavor for who comes in, where they're at, how we help them get to the next stage.
Thank you. And I would like, since it's 7:30 already, I would like to wrap the open day up with the last question for Maciej concerning the modular format, its strengths and the work-life balance that goes with the modular format.
Yes, so the main strength of this is that it's predictable and it's meticulously designed to get as much learning out of every unit of your time spent on this. Yes, one example, most of our modules happen around popular European holidays, so-called long weekends, which is very inconvenient for us because we can't have those long weekends and we need to teach during, let's say, May 1st weekend or November 1st weekend. But it's very convenient for our participants because these are not only, the single days, but as we know, those days mark kind of a week or, part of the week, which is often, basically shut for business. So your opportunity cost of going for a 4-day module during, a May 1st weekend is so much lower. And you also need to compare it. You need to compare apple to apple. Christophe was giving us excellent example about good decisions. Yes, I mean, if you compare it with a diploma mill kind of program, which there are many, of course, it's significantly more involving time commitment because we actually want you to master those skills that will build your strategic profile. But if you want to compare it with part-time quality programs that are our competitors, they often are either weekends or sometimes evenings. And I think there is no, it's not even close in terms of disruption. Like think of the equivalent of our program in terms of credit would take 35 weekends. So imagine, going through 2 years of your life without 35 weekends of your life. Yes. So you have a week, then you study on weekend, no time with family, and you have another work week. Yes. That's really tough. We had this model before and we decided to change to the modular program because we thought this is very, very, very tough, and it also prevents people. It puts a cap on what you can achieve in terms of internationalization of your student body, because people are not going to fly to another continent 30 times. People can and do come to our program from far away, 8 hours flight away, because basically over the period of 28 months, you need to take only a physical trip only once a quarter. So that's doable. We are interviewing participants from North America who are willing to do this. So it's so much more doable than anything else that's on the market. But it is a real learning process. It's not a diploma factory. We want you to learn. We want to go out of your comfort zone. So that's what you need to. The Benny's estimates basically about 10 hours on average. During those preparation times, maybe a little less during off times when you are in between. are about right. That's how the program was designed, and it's always good to hear from participants that that's what is happening.
Thank you very much. I would like to close the open day with these remarks, and I would like to cordially invite everybody to book a one-on-one consultation with me to get individual advice on any other questions you might have on your application. I'm very happy to advise you on your application and to give you some hints. And thank you, Christophe, for the research presentation. Thank you, Maciej and Yusaf, and have a nice evening, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Happy holidays with CEU Executive MBA. Send us this discount code and get an additional 2% holiday discount on tuition. Happy New Year!